Canadian couple Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka appeared to be love's young dream.
It was like, you know, the Barbie and Ken couple. It seemed like the ideal relationship.
But they were far from a match made in heaven.
The level of evilness with both these people is so extreme. These people were animals.
Were Bernardo and Homolka born to kill?
They were serial murderer rapists as a couple. Like, one of the most famous, apparently. I was talking to a Canadian about this, and I was like, oh yeah, apparently, like, I was making my jokes that I fucking tweet out. Jokes like, you know, Ontario is the murder capital of the world, don't you know? And she was like, actually, have you done Paul Kenneth Bernardo? And I was like, no, tell me more. And she proceeded to tell me the story. And this is actually very interesting overall. I like so much so that I'm going to tweet out that I'm doing it. Finally tackling the Paul Bernardo case. Do you feel like watching content like this is getting dangerously close to what? Glorifying murderers? Yeah, dude. I have a, don't worry though, I have a strict don't murder policy, so. So you watch Disney Plus Opinions on Loki? It's very good. And yes, I watched The Jinx. The Jinx was incredible.
On the 29th of June, 1991, a discovery at Lake Gibson in Ontario would horrify the nation. It would be a sickening chapter in a story that had begun 2 weeks earlier with the disappearance of a 14-year-old schoolgirl.
Leslie Mahaffey was a typical teenage girl, you know, beautiful girl in every respect. Went to school, you know, came from a good family, had good values, and was sweet and kind and generous. A really, you know, great kid who had her whole life in front of her.
On the 15th of June, Leslie had gone out with friends.
She was living at home with her mother and stepfather in Burlington, in a very nice middle-class neighborhood, and had been told that if you're out with your friends and you miss your curfew, you'll be locked out of the house. A little bit of tough love going on.
Leslie Mahaffey, a friend had died, and all the very popular friend at the school, and so everybody was sort of mourning the death, and she got home a little late.
The door was locked. She realized that she had forgotten her key. On all other occasions where she has forgotten her key, fortunately rare, she would ring the doorbell, knock on the door. Mom and Dad would answer the door, and she'd have to account for, you know, missing her curfew. For reasons that are rather inexplicable, she chose not to do that. Shortly thereafter, it became very clear that something was terribly wrong.
A search began for the missing schoolgirl, but her disappearance baffled detectives.
When Leslie Mahaffey disappeared from her home in Burlington, the news absolutely shocked. Not just, obviously, those living in the neighborhood, but Canadians in general.
14 days later, a canoeist on nearby Lake Gibson would discover the appalling answer to Leslie's whereabouts. But for one young couple, the 29th of June would be a far different experience. That very day, Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka were having a fairy tale wedding.
Carla Homolka had always thought of herself as a princess. She loved Disney characters, and she wanted to be a Disney princess, and she planned a wedding that certainly on its surface looked like something you could witness in Disneyland.
21-year-old Carla's Prince Charming was Paul Bernardo. 5 years her senior, but equally eager for a fantasy wedding.
There was a rented coach, the old-fashioned coach. There was pheasant under glass. There was a ball gown of a wedding dress that had the puffy princess sleeves.
To onlookers, it was the dream marriage of a
Most well-adjusted Disney adult.
dream couple.
You know, it was like, you know, the Barbie and Ken couple. They were, seemed like the ideal relationship.
But the true story of Paul
These are the people who were losing their shit about my opinion on Mandalorian earlier this morning. Those are those people.
Bernardo and Carla Homolka was no fairy tale. Both harbored deep, dark secrets that, once revealed, would send shockwaves through civilized society.
Carla Homolka's childhood has always been presented to us as more than average, average plus. She grew up in a small town. She had a mother and father whose marriage stayed intact.
Dad made a living primarily going to flea markets and selling lamps. Mom was some sort of administrative assistant at the hospital in St. Catharines. They had 3 daughters.
They were well liked in the community. The Homolka family, it was like they had a swimming pool, so it was a gathering place for everybody. So she wasn't like, you know, an only child or someone who didn't have a family. So she had a solid background.
She was the oldest girl, blonde, blue-eyed, pretty, vivacious. Spent a lot of time as a child playing Barbie dolls, but wasn't at all shy or weak.
She was naturally bright, but not diligent when it came to her studies. It's just she was very typical of young girls from small towns.
But it appears pretty young Carla may not have been all sweetness and light.
As Carla grew up, and I guess became the rambunctious teenager that many of us did, she went from being the very popular, blonde, always had a date, or at least a couple of guys who wished they had a date with her, to a darker phase.
At times, Carla's behavior struck friends as odd.
Some of her friends called her bizarre because she was into the Ouija stuff and a little bit of the occult, and she seemed fascinated with death.
She wore black. She began to play in the area of...
The fuck? Okay, it's not a phase, Mom. What is this? Like, she also did murder. How is being goth related to doing murders, dude? See, the problem is I feel like boomers, when they cover this stuff, they cover it from like a boomer POV.
You know, the psychicness, the seances, the dark side, the almost, I think, magical side.
One of her friends said that her pet had died, and Carla was determined to go to the backyard and dig up this body of this animal that they buried in the backyard. She had to see it. And finally they did it. Her friend didn't want to do it, but finally they did it. She just had this fascination with a dead pet.
The teenaged Homolka would go on to work at a local vet's.
Okay, that's weird.
And it was whilst at a hotel, attending a pet store conference in Toronto, that she met the man of her dreams.
That's weird, but now it's also witch talk shit. You know what I mean?
When she met Paul, it was like lust at first sight.
Taking coffee in the hotel lounge, 17-year-old Carla was approached by 23-year-old trainee accountant Paul Bernardo. There would be an instant and ultimately fatal attraction.
It was a chance meeting, but to a certain extent, it was precisely what Carla Homolka wanted. She was part of a high school club that prized the idea of getting married to someone wealthy, someone slightly older, and getting a big diamond engagement ring. So this was already her mindset.
She could have had other guys, so...
Bro, every time I cover murder in Canada, it literally feels like Canada is comprised of 11 people. There is like 50 different people that have said so far, oh, my mom actually went to high school with her. Oh, I go to that pet store. Like, what the fuck, dude? What is it? Is everyone in Canada living in the same zip code? Like, what the fuck's happening, dude? It's wild. Every time we talk about murder, there's like at least 50 to 100 chatters who are connected to the murder in one way. Sometimes in very meaningful ways. Like, I remember the fucking Air Force guy when we were talking about his murder, like the murders that he committed. Someone was like, oh yeah, my girlfriend's stepfather was like brought in for questioning. I'm like, what the fuck? Everyone in Canada lives in the same fucking neighborhood, dude. Like, every time we talk about Canada, there are so many chatters who are like, oh, dude, yeah, like, my mom almost got murdered by this person, you know?
She wasn't desperate, but she wanted him for some reason. I think something in the two of them just felt right. It resonated.
She was only 17. She was rather young. And Bernardo provided something for her that she was lacking. He came across as a strong individual, in control, and she became obsessed with him.
But there was far more to the ambitious young accountant than met the eye. And together, Paul...
This map explains why that's a thing. Each colored area is approximately a quarter of Canada's population. Are you fucking kidding me, dude? Okay, well, that does make sense. All you motherfuckers live on the border, bro. What the fuck? It actually feels like you were just trying to be as close as possible to America. It's so funny. It literally feels like an entire country was just like, oh, let's get as close. Let's get, let's huddle up next to the fire, don't you know? That's what it feels like. It actually feels like you guys were just like huddling up next to the fireplace. People live by the border to keep America out. We want to make sure America's not coming here. We want to keep America out. A lot of Northern Canada is just forest. I feel like that's such a better place to do murders. It's just all fucking wood. I mean, I guess like there are probably murders happening in that area. We just don't know about it because you know, they just never get caught. Because they got Mounties. Up there, it's just Mounties and forests. You know? Stop talking like that. Like what? No one's up there though. Who would you murder? There's no one here to kill. That's where they murder indigenous people? Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's where they do that. Forgot. All right, let's keep going.
Bernardo and Carla Homolka would become a deadly combination. In June 1991, while police searched for missing 14-year-old schoolgirl Leslie Mahaffey, Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka were enjoying a lavish, picture-perfect wedding. The seemingly dream couple had met 4 years earlier in the Toronto district of Scarborough. The year they met, the city would be rocked by an unprecedented series of violent rapes.
The sexual assaults were the most brutal that I'd ever seen in my career at that time, and I served for 31 years on the Toronto Police Service.
The mystery attacker would become known as the Scarborough Rapist.
There never was before and never was since such a string of attacks like that.
People were scared stiff for
Like, how the fuck did they not figure it out immediately? Because it's like, there is 11 people in Canada. So if they're murdering like 3 of the people, boom, that's 3 people knocked out from who could be the potential killer. And then the one guy who's like never around. So you just gotta be like, oh, that's the guy, don't you know? It's gotta be that guy. He's never around.
a very long time.
The terror would begin in 1987.
It was in the late spring, and we had 2 sexual assaults very close to one another. Both victims were attacked on their own property.
He attacked the women from behind, and they never really got a look at him at all.
He threatened the victims that he would do harm to them if they made any noise.
He scared them, like they were, literally afraid for their lives. If they screamed, he would kill them.
It's just funny, like all the Canadians are like, wait, why don't you stop? We don't sound like that. Come on, it's not funny. Stop mucking about. Except like the moment I flip on fucking, Quebecer accent, they're all gonna be like laughing their asses off like, yeah, that's exactly how they sound like. You're so funny.
So although they're attacked on their own property with family inside, they weren't able to call for help.
The 2 assaults that spring were just the beginning. Over the next 3 years, the Scarborough Rapist would strike again and again, targeting lone women and teenagers and paralyzing the community.
Several women were taking buses home at, late at night, and if you were a car following, it was easy to spot if there was a lone woman on the bus.
Police flooded the area and created a dedicated task force, but the elusive rapist continued to strike.
They couldn't figure out where he was going to attack next. Everybody was on guard, and yet the rapes continued.
May to December 1987, 6 attacks.
Some of the police officers, when their shifts were over, they were still cruising the area trying to find this guy, and they just couldn't get him.
April and May 1988, 3 attacks.
As he continued, he escalated in his violence. And some of the violence towards these victims was unspeakable.
October to December 1988, 4 attacks.
He would do awful things like gather up stones and sticks and insert them into the woman who had just been raped.
June 89 to May 1990, 5 more attacks.
He took some of their belongings with them,
Oh, fuck.
which left them feeling more unsafe than they were in the first place.
In a couple of cases, the women were just getting the courage to get up. He would reemerge, throw them to the ground, and attack them all over again.
The damage that it did to those victims was unreal.
Okay, this is completely psychotic.
Law enforcement knew it was only a matter of time before the unthinkable happened.
When the FBI profilers actually were called in, they did say, if you don't get this guy, you can see from the way he's escalating.
Wait, did they just say FBI? Is this like a collaboration, dude? It's a collab episode? What's happening?
He will turn to murder. So there's no doubt that the fact that he wasn't getting arrested made him bolder.
All the while, the Scarborough rapist was terrorizing the city. Karla Homolka was being wooed and captivated by her new beau, Paul Bernardo, a seemingly impressive and charming young man.
Actually, what is the Canadian like Federal Bureau of Investigations? Like in Turkey, it's MIT, Milli İstihbarat Teşkilatı. What is it? CSIS? No, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police is like separate. They're like, it's Mounties, right? CSIS is our CIA. Wait, really? Mounties are like the feds? It's not meat in Turkey? Why, did that change too while I was gone from fucking Turkey? Literally, Milli İstihbarat Teşkilatı used to be our like internal affairs agency. It means National Intelligence Organization. In Turkish, what I'm talking about. RCMP is the federal. Yes, they're the feds, but the bureau is called CSIS. Oh. I thought RCMP was like our state police. Motherfucker, you're Canadian. You don't know? This guy is literally from Canada and doesn't know what the RCMP does. How do you not know? You're from Canada. What the fuck? Holy shit. At least you know the top of the hour is here, so an ad break is coming, don't you know? Learn about your own federal authorities. Also learn how you can avoid the ads by subscribing either with a $5 a month subscription or with a free one with Twitch Prime. Türkiye federal olmadığı için benzeri galiba MIT, CIA gibi daha çok. All right. RCMP's federal, CSIS is our CIA. Okay, got it. Okay, here's the ad break now.
With good prospects.
He finished high school and went to university and eventually found his way into the Chartered Accountants program and worked for an accounting firm.
You look at him and you'd think that this guy is a professional, very, very confident, outgoing fellow who was very self-assured, didn't have any kind of doubts about his own ability.
Paul Bernardo was everything Karla Homolka had ever dreamed of, both as a child and as a teenager. He was older, tall, blonde. He was handsome. She called him her prince. And he had a car and he had a job. He ticked all her boxes.
But Homolka's Mr. Perfect was not all he seemed. Paul Bernardo was born in 1964, a Scarborough native.
He was troubled, it seems, from the very beginning.
His father's a voyeur, he was a peeping Tom. He seemed to be sexually inappropriate in a lot of ways.
His parents were sleeping in separate rooms, and it was just a very unsettled life that he had at home.
Despite the family turmoil, on the surface, the young Bernardo seemed well adjusted, joining the Boy Scouts and later becoming a summer camp counselor.
He was fairly athletic. He was a lifeguard when he was younger. He also took karate lessons. And, very good looking, and he could get any girl he wanted, and he wasn't shy on ego at all.
When Bernardo was 16 years old, his mother...
How are YouTube channels unironically doing a better job of like crime analysis than like a professional media operation? Like these guys literally are like, well, one of them was goth and the other had parents that were living in separate beds. Real murderer stuff. Very gruesome. Stop saying reusing jokes, you fucking idiot. There's a fucking difference between like me doing an accent and making a separate joke while doing an accent. Okay, god damn, bro. I'm sorry you're so triggered because you sound like this. All right.
Dropped a bombshell. The man he believed to be his biological father was not. Paul Bernardo had been the result of an extramarital affair.
When Bernardo found out that he was a result of an extramarital relationship, he became rather angry. He became angry at his mother.
She had referred to him as a bastard child. And I know that they had screaming matches. There's no question about that at all.
Damn, look, he sounds so different than the way I talk about that.
It wasn't a great family relationship.
I don't think he identified with his stepfather very much. I think he really hated him.
But there was one unhealthy interest the young Paul Bernardo had in common with his stepfather.
He was caught several times as a peeping Tom, trying to peer into the neighbors' windows. Parents often forbid their children from playing with him.
As he grew older, Bernardo's sexual needs became increasingly sordid. He began to humiliate and beat girlfriends and engage in sadistic sex. Most rejected him. That is, until he met Carla.
Carla's family life was pretty normal. There wasn't that much to say about it, but when she did meet Paul, she pretty quickly got into some of the deviance that he, the sexual deviance. She would write letters to him, saying, "Do what you want to me. I'll do anything and everything." So she resonated to his deviance very fast, which has to tell you this wasn't just, suddenly she changed. I'd have to say that there was already something there in her that he saw and triggered that she was quite ready for somebody like him.
In 1990, after 3 years of terror for the city of Toronto, police got a break.
I low-key feel like, because I know some of the details of this case, I don't know if I'm wrong or not, but I low-key feel like this documentary is setting it up in a way where they're like absolving Carla a little bit. And I don't like that.
In their search for the Scarborough rapist. For each of his 17 known assaults, he'd been careful to make sure his victims were unable to describe him. But in May, the elusive rapist let his guard down.
He was brazen enough at that particular point to attack the female from the front. This was the first glimpse that we had, which helped us create a composite drawing to help us identify this particular individual.
After the composite picture was distributed, police received a tip-off that the image bore a striking resemblance to a 25-year-old local accountant, Paul Bernardo. Detective John Munro called Bernardo to the police station.
Okay, bro, that looks nothing like him. What the fuck? What, do they not have like a good sketch artist in Canada? What the fuck? He literally was just like, all right, you know, throwing a dart at the wall.
Questioning.
I'll never forget this as long as I live. He'd come into our office late in the afternoon. He was neat, clean. He wore a shirt and a tie. His hair was cut. He was very calm, cool, and collected. He looked like the all-Canadian boy. And I talked to him about different things, about any problems he'd had with women. He said he never had any. Did he have a girlfriend now? And he said, I do. My girlfriend's Carla Homolka. Of course, in November of 1990, the name Carla Homolka didn't mean anything to us.
Because he had this sweet boy look, this cherubic look to him, and charm, gregariousness.
They just let him go? Dude, Canadian authorities, dude. Oh, well, you're pretty white. I think we're going to let you go now.
He was able, as any good psychopath can, to cover and charm people and make them believe that he's innocent.
Bernardo was one of 700 persons of interest that the task force were looking into. They'd already collected DNA samples from over 100 suspects.
I asked Bernardo to provide samples of his hair and saliva and blood, gave them up right away. By doing this is my opinion, he was trying to deflect any suspicion on himself by being so cooperative.
I mean, we know this from JCS. Many suspects will try to throw the scent off themselves by cooperating early and often.
Testing of the samples would eventually prove Bernardo was indeed the Scarborough rapist. But tragically, not soon enough.
Now, at that time, the DNA was in its infant stages in terms of being a forensic investigative tool. So the police took the sample and it sat for 2 years on a shelf.
By 1990, Bernardo was spending lots of time with the Homolka family. But although he was now engaged to his willing girlfriend, Carla, Bernardo was not satisfied.
Paul had this thing for virgins, and Carla had boyfriends before Paul, and he liked women who had, never had sex. They were virgins, and he was kind of annoyed.
For him, Carla's 15-year-old sister would provide the answer.
Carla and Tammy looked like twins, except for the age difference.
To Tammy, he was like, the big boyfriend. She sort of looked up to him, sort of idolized him, I guess. And with him, of course, all his thoughts were, sex. I want to have sex with her.
Paul Bernardo began pressuring Carla into arranging for him to take the virginity of her baby sister. And the most bizarre thing, and still impossible to comprehend, is that Carla did that.
6 months before their planned wedding, Carla Homolka decided to gift her younger sister's virginity to her boyfriend for Christmas.
Yes, he was a libertarian, chat.
The problem was that Carla was afraid that Tammy would tell.
Carla stole anesthetic from the vet's clinic where she worked.
And the idea was to put Tammy under and then have sexually assault her. And that way they could have their threesome.
On the 29th of December, 1990, With Carla's parents still in the house, they put their plan into action.
The family was all gathered and everybody went to bed except the three of them. They had Tammy drinking.
I'm gonna let you guys know the details here are fucking gruesome, okay? Like, it's gonna get worse.
Got her drunk, and as she passed out, they basically raped her in every possible way.
The unconscious 15-year-old began to turn blue.
Tammy vomited and suffocated.
They turned her upside down because Homolka knew that from when she worked in the veterinary's office, but she actually died.
They quickly thought of a cover story, you know, they called emergency, thought of a cover story, and that was accepted.
It was all passed off as an accidental death.
Oh,
which
yeah.
It wasn't, of course. Tammy was a gift that, like, to this day, to even talk about it is painful, because how do you...
Yeah, they just said that I think they said that she OD'd or something. No investigation, by the way.
You know, I'm a parent. Sorry. How could somebody set up her own sister? Like, how does somebody do that?
Tammy Homolka's unexpected
Wikipedia, Andy?
death
No, I'm telling you, like, this girl fucking told me all the details about it. That's why I'm
would
looking
not
at
signal
it
the
now.
end of Paul and Carla's deviant games. It would merely be the beginning of a sickening new chapter.
This is like an incredibly well-known, if not the most famous, like, recent murder case in Canada and murder rape, because these guys were like serial murder rapists. Even with an autopsy, the drugs and an overdose could still get away to this day. No, actually, I know a little bit more details than that, so I will just say that, like, they originally got away with it because there was no autopsy done.
For Christmas of 1990, Carla Homolka had promised to gift her sister's virginity to her fiancé, Paul Bernardo. But as they drugged and raped 15-year-old Tammy, she choked to death. And while the Homolka family grieved the loss of the young schoolgirl, Carla and Paul continued preparations for their dream June wedding.
They feigned a lot of remorse. Both Paul and Carla wept, Paul especially, about Tammy's death. But within a very short period of time, Carla was pressuring her parents to go ahead with the wedding. And she wrote to a friend how angry she was that her parents were taking so long, months, to get over Tammy's death because she wanted all of the attention back on her for her wedding.
That's a self-report.
Bernardo and Homolka's lavish wedding day went ahead as planned on the 29th of June 1991. But unbeknown to onlookers, as the happy couple smiled and posed for photographers, they were hiding another dark secret. They held the answer to the riddle of missing teenager Leslie Mahaffey. 14-year-old Leslie had mysteriously disappeared from outside her home 2 weeks earlier. On nearby Lake Gibson, a canoeist was about to discover her whereabouts. What he found would stun the nation.
It wasn't just a question of shock, it was a question of horror.
The water level was dropping down in Gibson Lake.
A fisherman found one, and then a passerby found another one.
Encased in cement. Leslie Mahaffey's dismembered body parts.
Some of the concrete wasn't solidified. It wasn't hardened, and it came apart, and one of the body parts drifted to the surface. And then they just they just dredged the lake, and they found out the rest of her remains.
Leslie's remains were found sawn up and encased in 8 concrete blocks. The people of Ontario now realized they had a maniac in their midst.
We're now dealing with someone who is demented in the extreme.
Chad, stop spoiling. I know what happened, but other people don't.
A psychopath, a serial killer.
And considering that, like, half of the Canadians in the chat didn't even know what their, like, federal agency was or what the RCMP was, they probably don't know the details about this as well. So let's not spoil it for them.
Because the Scarborough rapes had been going on, it just seemed like some new horror, that the crime was escalating in this small, quiet, perfect little town.
Leslie's fate had been sealed 2 weeks earlier. Before their wedding, Carla and Paul had moved into a rented house in St. Catharines.
Look, I'm sorry. I love making fun of Canada because I'm just jealous, okay? You already know this. So just let me fucking have this, okay? Just let me fucking have this. You already have healthcare. What the fuck else do you want? You have healthcare, affordable education. Like, just let me make fun of you from down here, okay? Selfish ass Canadians be like, oh, we don't have dental care, so it's not all right. It's like, dude, it's literally like, it's basically illegal here to have health care, okay? If you're poor. So shut the fuck up about your dental, don't you know?
St. Catharines is just, small, kind of Ontario community, which is accepted as being a very safe community. And obviously it wasn't.
Paul Bernardo's twisted urges for young girls had not abated.
He talked to Carla about it'd be nice to bring somebody home and just, I could have them at my leisure, for lack of a better expression. He just...
Bro, this guy literally wrote a book on murder and he can't even talk about it without crying. Like, I'm sorry. Dog, you wrote a book. Like, what do you... This is what you do, dude. What the fuck's going on?
He wanted to be able to have somebody where he wasn't attacking them outside and running. He wanted to have them as a slave in his house.
And it would be
very strange take. I don't know. I feel like you become professional after a while. You know what I mean? Like, you just... I would have expected him to be like precise. Not that he's a man, chat. It's that he's on camera and he's having like he's like giving his like professional analysis as a guy who writes like books about serial killers.
14-year-old Leslie Mahaffey, who paid the price for Bernardo's sick fantasies.
Thank you, the chatter who said it's like a surgeon who can't operate without gagging. It doesn't make sense.
On the night of the 15th of June, the schoolgirl had returned home late without her door key.
Unbeknownst to her, Paul Bernardo was on the prowl. He was seemed like a normal person. Like all psychopaths, they have a charm to them, and they're remarkably successful in their manipulation. And he started up a conversation with her, and that resulted in her abduction and taken to the home in St. Catharines.
When he brought Leslie home, it was weird. Carla was sleeping at the time, and she got up, and he said, or here's this woman I found. I think he'd put a hood over her head or something.
Carla Molka became enraged, apparently not because there was a young woman that he planned to rape in the house, but because Paul had shared their wedding glasses, the crystal flutes that you drink champagne out of it, and was sharing.
Okay, chat, maybe I was wrong. Maybe he was crying while he wrote the entire book, okay? I was wrong. He probably cried the entire time that he was writing the book.
with Leslie Mahaffey.
Over the next 36 hours, Paul Bernardo assaulted his victim repeatedly, constantly instructing her to say specific degrading phrases.
Bernardo engaged in scripting of his victims. He told his victims what to say. Tell me how great I am. Tell me I'm the king, and so on. He is sexually aroused by degrading and humiliating his victims in a very extreme way.
Apparently he had a difficult time, even with the rapes, keeping an erection. And the scripting helped because it was about humiliating these girls, saying things like, you know, your boyfriend's not as good as I am, and
Here's another episode of Chat will literally say anything. I'm not even here. And there's this motherfucker who said, shut up and just play the video. Like, I'm not even here and I saw it. I saw it from the other side of the room. Like, the video is very clearly still playing. Unless he's like literally a mobile Andy. He's a mobile Andy that's just like, that thinks the video is still paused.
much more vulgar things, which I won't repeat, but he wanted to degrade them as much as he possibly could and also elevate himself, make them say to him, you know, what an amazing person he was.
After he'd had his way with her, Leslie's young life was taken.
He strangled her and then took the body in the basement, and Carla's parents came over for a Sunday dinner, and there's the body in the basement there.
This, to me, is one of the coldest things. She's going up and down into this cellar area getting food with the body lying right there.
The next day, Bernardo set up a plastic tent in the basement and plugged in a power saw.
He went and, hacked up the body, and he bought lots of bags of concrete from one of the local stores there and encased each body part in concrete and just threw them into the, driving over a little bridge and just threw them in.
Despite public horror and a high-profile police investigation, Bernardo and Homolka didn't stop.
After Leslie was held, tortured, killed, and then decapitated.
Okay, now I feel like he's too into it when he's talking about the gruesome details. And it's kind of making me feel like the previous crying thing was an act. I mean, okay, 32:18, let's not forget. I'm just going to go back. Look at his face while he's talking about.
He said, or here's this woman I found. I think he put a hood over her head or something.
He's like smiling, dude.
Carla Homolka became enraged, apparently not because there was. They went looking for another young victim.
And this time, the husband and wife would go hunting together.
Kristen French was a remarkable, beautiful young girl, comes from a great, great family, was involved in school sports, had a tremendous sense of humor. She had her whole life in front of her.
She was a very, very careful young woman.
Dude, I am vibe checking him so hard right now, dude.
After Leslie's death, she was always telling other students, like, don't talk to strangers if you see a stranger, blah, blah, blah. Don't stay away. She was always very careful.
On the 16th of April, 1992, Bernardo and Homolka would commit their most brazen crime yet.
Kristen is walking back from school in the afternoon, broad daylight.
She was walking home down a very quiet residential street. She was in front of a church.
This time, the married couple would operate in tandem.
All of a sudden, a car comes up, and you see Carla Homolka, who was an attractive young woman.
Carla was out with a map, pretending she was lost.
That was the trap.
And Kristen, who was very careful, sees this young woman seemingly need help, so she went over to help her.
As Kristen leaned over the map, Carla grabbed her, Paul came from around, grabbed her, pushed her into the car, bent to the back seat, and they zoomed off to that same death house.
They kept her for 3 days, approximately, and videotaped it.
What? Dude, these fucking psychos, they always get more bold. Not to do like the FBI psychoanalysis, but psychopath analysis, but they literally always get more and more bold.
You know, just the brutality of it was gruesome. Can I say?
The fact that they videotaped the sadistic conduct is actually quite common. That's what sexual sadists do, and they do it because they want to manufacture their own pornography, where he's really the star actor.
During her ordeal, Kristen's...
Dude, I mean, okay, maybe there's a carve out, like a volcano exception for this, I think. I mean, I don't know. I just like, I feel like if they videotaped it, then like, then you can maybe throw them in the volcano. I feel like this is one of those instances where like, it's like, how many times are you going to have it on tape? You know what I mean? So you can't open it up for abuse. You know what I mean?
saw an opportunity to escape her tormentor.
Paul went out for food during the 3 days of captivity. He went out for food, and Kristen was quite bright. She said she wanted food from the farthest outlet in St. Catharines, so she knew Paul would be gone for a half hour. So basically, Carla was alone with Kristen French for like a half hour, and Kristen was pleading with her, and Carla wouldn't let her go. She knew that they had to kill her, and she knew that this poor girl was going to be dead in a matter of days or whatever. And she had just picked up the phone and dialed 911. It would have saved her life. She didn't do it.
After 3 days of degrading and brutal sexual assault, Bernardo strangled Kristen. Together, he and Carla bathed and scrubbed the body, cut off all her hair, and dumped her beside a country lane.
By the time Kristen French's naked, shorn body was discovered in a ditch in Burlington, everybody was on high alert.
But all was no longer well for the once happily married couple. After the murder of Kristen French, Paul and Carla's relationship would begin to break down.
He started going downhill. He started living in his delusional world, and he started getting abusive with Carla. And he beat her up, and she basically left him.
The assault would spell the beginning of the end for the killers.
It wasn't until Carla Homolka went screaming to police about the fact that she'd been beaten up by Paul Bernardo that the case began to crack.
While Homolka pressed charges against her husband for assault, the DNA samples that the Scarborough Rape Task Force had taken more than 2 years before finally surfaced.
The long-awaited DNA results came back from the Scarborough rapes, and Bernardo was a match. And so they went to Carla, and she said, yeah, he confessed to me about the Scarborough rapes, and he was arrested after that.
When the officers went to speak with him, he was no longer the quiet, unnervous sort of individual. He just said, I'm not telling you guys jack.
Oh, there is fat interrogation content coming up.
Homolka, however, did talk. She admitted involvement in Bernardo's killings of Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French and the death of her sister Tammy, but claimed that she'd been a battered wife and an unwilling accomplice.
Dude, this is incel fodder, by the way. Like, this case will literally, I need you, if you're in the margins, and if you feel like you could potentially become an incel again or some shit, don't watch this case. Because it will literally turn you into an incel.
With little evidence against Bernardo for the murders, prosecutors felt they needed a witness to convict him.
The only way to put Paul Bernardo in prison was to believe Karla Homolka's story.
Homolka was offered a deal: testify against her husband and receive a total of just 12 years in prison. But before the trial began, a discovery was made that would show the self-proclaimed battered wife in a whole new light and horrify an entire nation. In 1993, Karla Homolka had admitted involvement in the killings of schoolgirls Leslie Mahaffey, Kristen French, and her own sister Tammy. She'd claimed to be a battered wife and the unwilling accomplice of her husband Paul Bernardo. But before the trial of Bernardo began, a discovery was made that showed Karla in a whole new light. Hidden in the bathroom ceiling of the couple's St. Catherine's home was a collection of shocking home video cassettes.
How is it incel fodder? Okay, I don't want to spoil it, but that's why.
The mini cassette tapes actually had writing on them in Karla's hand. Things like Kristen, Leslie, Paul, and me, with hearts and flowers on it, like little stickers.
What we all discovered is that there was Karla Homolka raping, torturing these young girls right alongside her husband, Paul, and she seemed to be enjoying it.
Attorney for the victims' families, Tim Danson, would be required to view the grim home movies.
Jesus Christ,
It was
dude.
a pretty awful thing to be part of, in the sense to see that level of pain and anguish. And
I don't know if they're gonna show like actual shit from the home videos. It's YouTube.
despair
They won't.
at
No, but like
unspeakable
certain
levels.
parts of it.
It is not something that that any human being should ever endure, and I'm talking about Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey. I mean, it's that it's that disturbing.
No, like, no, they're not gonna show the fucking. They're not gonna show the stuff, but they could at least show like a bloodied victim or something. You know what I mean? Sometimes they show like crime scene photos and stuff. You know what I mean? That's what I mean.
The collection also included footage of Bernardo and Homolka raping Karla's unconscious younger sister, as well as a sex tape recorded shortly after her sister's death, with Karla mimicking Tammy.
Within 3 weeks, we have Karla dressing in Tammy's clothing, trying to entice Paul without any remorse at all.
Victim, by the
The
way.
public would speculate that Bernardo, as the Scarborough rapist, had not killed before he met Homolka, and question if she had been the motivating force for murder. What was certain, however, was that together Bernardo and Homolka were a deadly duo. But were they born killers? Or had their upbringings made them monsters?
Nature versus nurture is a puzzling question in the case of Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka. Karla Homolka apparently had a really nice suburban childhood. Oldest of 3 children, pretty popular, had a little bit of the dark teenage years, but nothing unusual. And then becomes, if not the driving force behind sexual torture and murder, certainly a partner in crime, to despicable crimes, planned crimes. Paul Bernardo, on the other hand, has been described as probably mentally unwell from his early childhood. Now, of course, psychopathy can develop from a bad childhood, and we know that Bernardo was not treated well, that he was told at a very susceptible period that he was illegitimate.
I very strongly believe it's upbringing, that you have a troubled home life, and then it leads to certain feelings, and then he happened to meet somebody who facilitated those feelings. If he had met a woman who was horrified, you want to rape my sister? Like, if he, and by just some fluke, he happened to meet this woman who just facilitated everything. She just went along with his twisted, sick sexual fantasies.
He used Homolka for his own needs, and Homolka fed off Bernardo to satisfy her own needs. It was a symbiotic relationship. How these things developed is probably a combination of internal and environmental factors, but in my judgment, and the judgment of most people who have studied this in a serious way, that there's a significant neurobiological component to this, whether it's hormonal, genetic, electrical, chemical, exacerbated by a head injury, and plus psychosocial factors. There's a lot of things have to go wrong, which makes these crimes extraordinary.
So even if Bernardo and Homolka had never met, might each of them have been destined to become murderers?
There were people who said, well, if Carla had never met Paul, she would have never been a killer. I'm not sure that that's true. She probably wouldn't have been a killer, but she would have been a calculating, manipulative person. There's no doubt about that. Very narcissistic, very self-centered. So certainly, had another killer crossed her path, she wouldn't have hesitated to do whatever it took to be part of that person's life. Paul, I think, would have become a killer no matter what. The fact that
This is a wild fucking take, dude. It is a wild take. Considering that, like, she fucking absolutely participated in all of this. Okay? Like, she facilitated and she also did it herself. It's an insane take, dude. Especially considering that she literally, one, gave up her own sister and then participated in the raping of her own sister and the murder of her own sister. Like, anyway, I just want to point this out before we move further. I'm sure that they're going to tell you the what happens in the end of this case, which is why I think it's ridiculous that she's saying that. Paul got a 35 out of 40 on the psychopath checklist. The checklist is a little outdated, but he was definitely a psychopath. Carla got a 5 out of 4. So I guess they assume she couldn't be complicit. It's nuts. Like, the fact that she's still saying that is fucking crazy. Knowing what they know.
he had a wife who
5 out of
allowed him
40.
to bring the
5 out of
victims
4,
home.
sorry.
You know, just made it easier. But if he hadn't,
And yes,
he
you can absolutely psychopath your way out of those tests, which is why those tests aren't great.
still would have killed.
Ultimately, the deal Carla made with the prosecution would stand. She would serve just 12 years for her part in the crimes, whilst Paul Bernardo will spend the rest of his life behind bars.
There it is.
That person's life.
Will spend the rest of his life behind her part in the crimes.
That's what's fucking insane about this. So there you go. Now that this has been revealed, she got 12 years. And she's already out. I think she got out on good behavior. Yeah. Yeah. She's been out and about. Recently was allowed to work in an elementary school. Now, I am an advocate for rehabilitative justice all the way. But the fact that, like, they literally gave this guy 40 years, but then she got off in 12. And by the fucking way, at this point, I'm pretty sure they didn't know about the sister. I think they find out later. They, like, uncover the sister's body, and then they find it, right? Then they find out her involvement. Please say psych, bro. When I talk about the exception, to prison abolition and, like, why you can't fully abolish prisons, this case and people like this, which are edge cases, by the way, okay? Cases like this, in this case in particular, is exactly why I say you can never fully abolish, like, prisons, or a concept that, like, absolutely cannot take certain individuals out of civilized society for the betterment of the public. Okay? You're falling for propaganda? No, I'm not. I have literally always talked about how antisocial personality disorders, psychopathy, and sociopathy are, with respect to our current medical profession and how much technology is available, are unfortunately unsolvable. Okay? So for the time being, there's not really anything you can do to rehabilitate psychopathic serial rapists and murderers. Yeah, here it is. Convicted teen killer Karla Homolka is volunteering at a Montreal elementary school. Apparently, she moved to Montreal because people don't have access to the fucking news there. Okay? So they just didn't know. Yeah. Yeah, they just don't speak English there, so. You know, they were just like, wow, what are you, man? Where? I do not understand you. Oui. Sacre blanc. She should come work in our elementary schools. Hon. That's what they said. They're like, please, come over, Karla Homolka. It will do very good here. This is very much like France. We love being French here. All right, let's keep going.
Paul Bernardo will spend the rest of his life behind bars. One half of this deadly duo now walks the streets free.
Yup.
One thing that was clear when you look at these videotapes is that the level of evilness and the level of psychopathy with both these people is so extreme that there is no ounce of being human. These people were animals.
Okay, tape's on. My name is Detective Brad Hoover. My badge number is 6188. I'm with the Toronto Police Service Sex Crimes Unit. The time now is 2:05 p.m.
Like I said, I'm all in favor of rehabilitation, but someone who raped and murdered their own sister probably should not be able to work at a fucking elementary school. I don't know if that's a crazy take from me. You might call me reactionary for that. But someone who raped and murdered her own sister should never be able to work at an elementary school. I mean, look, you might rehabilitate at a certain point. Okay? But that's fucking insane, dude. That's insane. Why? Like, what are there not enough school workers, dude? Like, there's not enough people to work at schools that you were like, no, we have to have the rapist murderer who raped and murdered his sister on camera. We have to have that person at our school. She has to work here.
p.m. We're presently at the Kingston Penitentiary in Kingston, Ontario.
Sorry, they said it like this. Oh no, we have to have this person. There's no one else in French Canada to work an honest job. Sacre bleu.
In a boardroom, and I think is the main building you would call it. Present in the room here, if I could just have each of you identify yourself for the purposes of the videotape that's being made. Seated to my left off camera and now sitting at the table is your counsel. Just please identify yourself.
Yes, certainly. It's Anthony Bryant.
And straight across the table from me, if you could identify yourself.
Constable Darlene Coulis, C-O-U-L-I-S, badge number 6483 from Toronto Police Service.
And seated to my right, if you could just identify yourself. Please.
Paul Jason Teal, a.k.a. Paul Bernardo.
And again, my name is Brad Hoover, and today is June the 7th, 2007. Mr. Teal, the reason that we're here today is to speak to you in regards to a couple of matters. First of all, before we start, I just want you to make sure that you're aware that what we say is being videotaped here.
Yeah.
I'm just going to start this audio tape. I forgot to do that. I just started this audio tape here. We started the interview at 2:05 p.m. My name is Detective Brad Hoover. Paul, you're not presently being given a caution or anything, and I want you to understand that what you're saying to us today is voluntary. It means if you don't want to talk to us, you don't have to. Your counsel is present, and if you need to speak to him, you certainly can. But I just want to make sure that you understand that what you're saying here is voluntary, and that we're interviewing you as a potential witness. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Just a little bit of background about the first time we met.
Yes, chat. He does look like Ludwig, okay? But it's only because the quality is really low. Please stop.
Back last year in April of 2006. That was in regards to a letter that you had sent through the Attorney General's office. It filtered down to my office in regards to some admissions that you made.
I was just doing muggle moves.
I'm here to tell you that I have concluded that investigation, and that there have been 2 offenses that I have been able to identify, and with the information that you provided to me at that time, was able to conclude those matters as having been committed by yourself. So for that, I thank you for that information. And
sorry, you've identified
the offense. No. I've identified the offense that you were talking about, and based on that information, I was able to conclude those cases that actually provided enough information that I was satisfied that you were the person that committed those offenses.
Okay, now what about,
make sense?
And that makes sense. What about ones that you thought that I came forward with and maybe thought that I didn't do it? Was there any of those?
There was none that I thought that you didn't do. There was some that I didn't have enough information to either identify the offense because you were unable to provide enough details at that time, or they may not have ever been reported to the police. As you said when we spoke, some of them were, I won't call them minor type offenses, but
I understand.
Offenses that may not have been reported to the police.
Okay, problem. I turned on the TV, I waited for Peel Regional to come by. September rolls around, they make a public announcement. It's written on my file here that I lied to police and I did not commit the crimes that I said I committed on the offenses in Peel Region.
Okay.
Big problem.
I have spoken to Peel Region,
Yeah.
and they have told me that they don't have enough information at this point to identify anything that you've, the letter that was sent to the police, or through to the police, wasn't specific enough to identify any offenses. Now, that's something that we can talk about sort of following this interview, and if you want to get into that, we can talk about that.
Well, I've been sitting with this for years, and it's written on my file, and it makes me seem like, oh, he's just this crazy. You guys love doing that. I'm this crazy psychopath or liar. Why was that statement issued? Why didn't they come in and talk to me if they didn't have enough information?
What the fuck are they getting out of this? Like, how is he sitting here offended at being called like a psychopathic liar? You have the tapes to prove it, motherfucker. What do you mean? Like, it doesn't. Why are the cops letting him lead the meeting as well? Like the interrogation.
We were waiting on that tape. You can play that tape back. I asked you guys, is Peel Regional going to come in? I sat there month after month after month. No one came. I turned on the TV in September. Peel, declared that Paul Bernardo was, this crazy liar to police. What's the fundamental problem here?
Well,
I know. I mean, truth, justice, the Canadian way, and no one comes in, and now you guys are saying that you didn't have enough information.
Well, I can't answer for them specifically as to what they did or didn't do. I can tell you that because they're a separate police department, I don't have any control over what investigation that they did do. I can tell you that I have spoken with an investigator in Peel Region, and they have told me that at this point they don't have enough information to move forward. They haven't been able to identify any offense that was specifically talked about.
That statement you're giving me is much different from the public statement they said, which said I was a liar.
Okay, well, I don't.
There's night and day, and they didn't come in. If they didn't have enough information, why don't you come in and get the information? Absolutely. I mean, either I'm lying or I'm not lying. And this goes to the crux of this argument. Either I'm a liar to you, I'm going to lie to you right now about everything, like I did to Peel Regional, according to their story, or I'm not. And, I'm not going to sit here and come voluntarily and have people come. You guys ban me from the press. You roll your stories over, and you constantly say that I'm a liar. I'm a liar. I made mistakes 17 years ago. Okay, fine, I did. But now we're talking about today, and you're not going to roll forward that I'm some psychopathic liar sitting in jail.
Wait, what the fuck? Wait. Where is this? Like, what is this timeline? They really just dropped the interrogation on us out of nowhere, and I'm so confused as to like. What the fuck is going on? It's like he's saying, I'm a rapist, not a liar, sir. What the fuck? He's like more offended that they're calling him a liar than like a rapist child murderer. He's admitting to more crimes. Okay. I mean, it's been a while, so, like, this is 2007, so they just, like, brought him in for, what, additional... He's angry that past crimes he admitted to aren't accepted as him doing it?
Claiming other people's responsibilities for other crimes. This is a total cross-examination point. You want to start this thing? Locklear's going to grab a hold of it and say, well, he lied about other crimes. He's a crazy liar. Why didn't you guys resolve this?
And again, I can't answer for...
It's very common for these people to worry about their image and public perception than anything else. He's 42 here. It's 2007. He got remarried in 2007. Okay. Wait, someone said read my message here, but I can't find it. Oh, here. They are saying he's lying about other murders he's trying to confess to. It's the other way around, so he's mad.
What Peel Region did or didn't do.
Jurisdictionally, we're kind of bound as to what takes place.
But still, the good guys, the bad guys. You know what I mean? You're on the same team.
Yes, we are, but as far as us investigating matters that take place outside of the actual Toronto proper, that's why Peel Regional has their police service, and like Detective Hoover said, we can't answer.
Bro, how the fuck? I mean, I'm not saying that it's a good thing that like pedophiles get murdered in prison, but how didn't they murder him in prison? Like, does that not happen in Canadian prison? Like, it doesn't make sense. Protective custody? I mean, regardless, dude, like... That's wild.
As to what they did with their investigations or the issues that they were looking at that transpired out in their area, and we really can't speak to that. Now, whether that's something you wish to have your counsel deal with them on, and that's something else. But unfortunately, there wasn't a lot that Detective Hoover and I could do in regards to those things.
Well,
That's how it leaves
who's
you at a
ever
bit of a loss
watching this
right now.
thing, they should subpoena these guys to Peel Regional. They can bring in all the facts to show just where I lied then, if I'm a liar. That's what I say to do, because either I'm a liar or I'm not a liar, and I'm not a liar. But you guys are trying to paint me as one. The public, according to the public, they turned on the TV in September of last year, and I was this crazy liar. That's what the TV reported, and not only did they report it there, they wrote it on my file. I've got it right myself. Paul Bernardo, Peel Regional said Paul Bernardo lied to police about crimes he didn't commit. Said he did.
Okay.
I mean, that's just awful. I mean, come on.
Okay.
Enough manipulation, you know what I mean? Either you tell the truth or don't, otherwise the whole purpose of any interview is just stupid. Because if I'm this crazy liar, I'll be just sitting here lying to you about everything, right? Right? I mean, why wouldn't I? I'm just as crazy.
This is so fucking crazy. This is the most insane thing I've ever seen. This guy's like upset that they don't believe that he's like murdered more than he actually has. It literally, he's just like upset that they won't believe him. What the fuck?
Crazy liar.
Okay. And again, I don't know exactly what was said by Peel Region, and I'm not here to answer to what they said. And so either,
you know, it's one thing. You know, I'm a human being, and to say that I'm a dangerous offender, going to be raping and killing and all this stuff is fine. I mean, for publicity, you know, get that, you know, tough on crime, get that bad guy. But when you go to a certain point of line, it just, I mean, it affects me totally. You know, I made mistakes a long time ago. But don't say that today about me, because then we're lying, and then we got a big problem because...
Bro, mistakes is... What an understatement, dude. What a fucking understatement. I made mistakes? Bro, you literally... It's not fine. You didn't make a mistake. It's top of the hour, and there's a 60-second ad break coming right now, no matter what you say. Okay? But make no mistake, you can avoid those ads. You can avoid those ads with a $5 subscription or with a free subscription in the form of a Twitch Prime. Okay? Or you can use an ad block or a VPN. But here's the ad break now. Fuck. Okay. But like for real, this is... Motherfucker said mistake, dude. Channel reported for terrorism. Your segues are becoming more and more jarring as the day progresses. That's the Hasanabi classic, baby. It's a guarantee. Hassan always looks so pleased with himself after. Oh, dude, that's why I pause. Once I hit the ad break, I pause and I look at the chat. It's like when which I assume a comedian, when he's doing like a good stand-up bit and he has like a good punchline and he just like leans into it and just sits there and takes it all in. Like people are laughing and he's just sitting there and taking it in. That's how I feel when you throw tomatoes at me. I sit there and I look at the chat to see the reaction. I'm like, so good. So good. I just let it come in. Yeah, I'm eating all the tomatoes. I'm like, go ahead. Throw your tomatoes at me. I'll eat all of them. Do not come. I'm gonna come. Also, like, you know, we have fun while the ad break's happening, so the fucking poors, the unwashed masses, can also enjoy the video.
I'm
They
looking
don't
at you
miss
and
out
you're the
on it
bad
too
guys.
much.
Because I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm telling the truth, and you guys are walking around issuing statements that I lied here, I lied there. No?
Well, and again, those are statements that were issued by Detective Hoover or myself or
Yeah, I know,
from the
but I
Toronto
mean,
Police Service, like I
it's
said.
Attorney General who sent you guys down here. He's fighting the case. He's taking this ball bitch back, right? So it's really it's the same organization, isn't it, Attorney General? I see him on TV talking about it.
But this is a separate matter from what those issues were.
But it's still the
last
Attorney
year.
General's office.
Yeah, it very may well be, but like I said, we can't speak to anything that Peel Regional does or statements that they release out to the media because they have things
You know,
that they were looking at.
it's the same thing. If I'm a liar, take the facts that they have. They can come down and talk to me. Any cross-examine, any defense lawyer can call them up and show me where I'm lying because you're not going to find it. Maybe.
Okay, this is not that interesting. Am I crazy? Like, I feel like, I mean, it's weird, but he's already in jail. It's not like they're, there's no, like, JCS analysis. It's just like, I don't know. I think it's time for some drama. We're going to spice it up.